Hey, that was in sync.
We're always in sync.
We always win. Whoa, what? Always.
Most of the time.
Welcome back to another episode of Two Truths and a Life. I did some weird things with my hands then. It's like, you know, when you're trying to take a photo and it's like, shotgun, get down, stay down. You know what I'm talking about, boys. You know what I'm talking about. But welcome back to Two Truths and a Life. We're up to the third episode now, and today we're speaking specifically into relationships.
Yeah, I love this subject.
Do you said that about plant medicine?
I love every subject, to be honest. I just like talking.
Yeah, fair. I know. Look, she's not wrong. She definitely does.
We'll talk someone's ear off.
We'll talk someone's ear off. But what specifically around relationships are we going to venture into today, darling?
Yeah, babe. I think it's a really interesting topic because I am a survivor of domestic violence and something that I think has been not challenging. I wouldn't say challenging, but we're navigating through is how you hold space for me after going through what I've been through in life when it comes to domestic violence. So let's talk into that.
All right. It's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because I definitely have seen a lot of patterns playing out within our relationship where there's like warning signs that go off or things that might come up due to previous experiences because, you know, obviously when it comes to something like domestic violence and especially what you endured, it's going to really leave an imprint on the nervous system. And so it's almost like as soon as something triggers that, boom, it's like straight back into shutdown or straight back into disassociate or whatever it might be. But we'll talk more into that a little bit later on. But I guess, you know, first of all, let's talk into our relationship, talk a bit more about what that's like. I mean, being two business owners, for a lot of people, they wouldn't understand, you know, because, you know, you generally in a relationship dynamic, you've got, you know, two people working completely different jobs, whereas we are working almost in the same thing, but we've got two separate businesses, two separate problems, separate sets of issues that come up, right?
Yeah, and at different times.
And at different times, right? Really, at different times? It seems to be like, as of late. Similar times.
But still, like, on a daily basis, I think, like, sometimes we aren't really on the same level emotionally, like, we've got things going on. It was chaos all the time, right? So we're never going to be both on a high or both like rarely, really. I feel like it's we're on different days.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's hard to navigate our emotions sometimes.
Most definitely. I think that's actually a really interesting thing to talk into as well. It's like the fact that we do live such high stress lives. But I think that the way that we do show up for each other is definitely something that it's something I've never experienced in a relationship before. I think it's really interesting because we can have done all the work, but if you come into a relationship where you've got a partner that isn't on the same level of, you know, emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, or even willingness to actually continue to grow, it just makes the relationship almost a waste of time because you've got one person that wants to better themselves, one person that wants to, you know, show up for the other person to help them to grow, to help them to heal, to help them to go through the things they need to go through. And you've got the other person who is completely shut off from it all. And you've experienced that in previous relationships, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we were actually speaking about this earlier, about our communication, and you asked if I've always been a good communicator.
Yeah.
And, like, I definitely believe that I've always been really good at communication.
Would your ex say the same thing?
No, my exes wouldn't say the same thing. But I think it's one of those things, like, our relationship is required for two people to show up and two people to communicate and do all the things, not just one. So you could be a really great communicator. And I look at my previous relationship, and don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. There would have been times where, you know, communication wasn't my strong point at that time. But overall, I think I'm a really strong communicator. And the thing is, you can be in a relationship, and if it's just me showing up and communicating and the other person has been, in my experience, avoidant, then I can be the best communicator in the world. But if they're going to run for the hills, I'm like, who am I communicating with, you know?
Yeah.
So that's been my experience in my past relationships. But I've also been in a healthy relationship where communication was, like, I was in a relationship for 9 years. So our communication was great. So
would you say that's probably the basis for where you learnt to communicate in relationships? Was probably that 9-year relationship that you had with the father of your children?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, he was very patient, but also he was a great communicator.
He would have had to be.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, good jokes.
Yeah, he's a really great communicator, and in general, just a solution-based man. And so are you, and I see a lot of that in you, and I think that at the end of the day, successful relationship is looking at, okay, what's the solution to this? Not, something I've struggled with is in the past is like when I have wanted to communicate or fix a problem or find a solution and then someone's been avoidant, it's like it prolongs like days, even weeks sometimes, the issue. And I'm such a I don't want to sit in this energy. I want to work this out. Like, it doesn't have to be straight away. Yes, I am definitely more on the anxious side, I'd say. I'm definitely more secure, but when it comes to wanting to, overcome something, I definitely want to sort it out like then and there, because I don't want to sit in the energy. But I definitely have worked on that in from previous relationships, knowing that some people don't overcome things as quickly as I do and don't want to. They do need space. But in saying that, for me, I'm like, I'm not going to go days waiting for you to come back to me. I'm like, I still want to, let me know if you need space. Give me a time. Say, hey, I will come back to you in about half an hour, I just need some space. And I'll be like, sweet, you've given me a time. I know that you're going to come back to me.
I think that's really important for someone that does come from a more of an anxious attachment style. And if we talk into what the attachment styles are, you've got the anxious, the avoidant, secure, and then we've also got the fourth, which is disorganized, which is almost like a mix between, they call it fearful avoidant, which is like the swinging between the anxious to the avoidant, which is generally for, I guess, if you've suffered severe trauma at a young age, that's generally where you'll sort of sit. But me as well, I'm very much in the anxious, or have been in the anxious category in the past. And it's interesting to look at that, right? If we look at what the different dynamics are. So anxious is more so, I need to fix the problem now. It's like, I need validation to tell me that everything's okay. I don't feel secure within myself to some degree, or within the relationship. I don't feel safe. And so we need, when we're in the anxious sort of attachment style, we need communication. We need someone to be very clear, very direct with us, to tell us what's going on. When things are left up in the air, it feels, this is when the anxious will come out, the anxiety, right? I don't know what's actually going on here. And it's like for me, and I'm sure it's the same for you, you get that almost feeling in your stomach. It's like, oh, this doesn't feel nice.
Yeah.
Whereas for the avoidant, it's like the polar opposite to that. They want to tuck their tail between their legs and run away from the problem. They don't want to sit in it whatsoever. There is no chance they want to fix it. As soon as conflict arises or anything like that within relationships, especially, what they'll do is they'll find the easiest way out. For a lot of the men that I work with, this is where they would come from. They'd be on the drugs. They would be, using porn. They would be using escorts. They would be even overworking, right? Alcohol, whatever it might be, but they were using anything they could to distract themselves from the problems in their life. And that's more so the avoidant sort of attachment style. Then we have the secure, which is where we all want to be. Which is, it's okay. I can healthily set boundaries. I'm okay to respect other people's boundaries. I don't need as much from someone else. I can give that to myself. It's coming from a place of security within self. However, what we'll generally find is, and obviously as we've experienced in the past, is you'll have an anxious attachment style and an avoidant attachment style. And I guess with that, the anxious needs to practice setting boundaries rather than giving themselves to everyone. The avoidant needs to practice communication. Whereas the anxious over communicates, the avoidant is like a boundary. It's not a boundary, this is a fucking brick wall. You ain't getting through that shit.
I'm
and you understand with a fucking trying to bang it down with a hammer
at this point.
So that's, I guess, the dynamics that sort of play out within relationships, and it's really interesting. This is a really cool opportunity for people to drop a comment below and let us know which attachment style you sort of feel that you swing towards. But coming from us two, both previously being more of an anxious attachment style, do you think that was a lot to do with why now we are able to be so secure, because we do have that level of I'm okay to communicate?
Look, I have thought about this because, I, again, come from my first relationship, main relationship in my life was my kid's dad, and we were together for 9 years. So that was I was secure. I never experienced being anxious. I never experienced even what avoidant is. So for 9 years of my life, it was that's just how I knew a relationship was, how I was. So then having and experiencing avoidant, that was really interesting to me, because now I'm coming back into this relationship, I'm so secure again. So then it makes me think, are we anxious, or is there actually something that they're doing to bring that up in
The energy,
us. Do you know
right?
what I
The
mean?
energy.
Because I feel like I'm a really secure person. I feel like you're a really secure person.
But I think that's also, like I said, once again, due to the way that we show up for each other within the relationship, because I've definitely been avoidant in the past as well. When I was hitting the drugs and I'd have issues, I'd literally just go and get on the bender.
Yeah.
I'd have problems. My partner would blow up at me. I'd be like, see you later.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't come home for days. You know, and once again, I think that's like also, I think, comes down to our level of emotional maturity and awareness that we have now after being through previous relationships, right? I think there's a big part of that. But when was the first time that you really experienced what it was like to be with someone who was avoidant?
Yeah, my domestic violence relationship.
Okay.
That was extreme though.
And that was
pretty like that was the extreme level of feeling that push-pull. Anxious attached. I definitely felt anxious attached to the whole situation, but like
even maybe a level of trauma bonding to some degree.
It was 100%, because it was like he'd give me that push pull, and then when he'd come back, I would feel okay again. Yeah. And it's like I always wanted to feel that. I always knew it was going to get to that point, but it kept on getting longer in between those points. So it started off with just a day. He'd like leave and be like, I just need some time. I'm like, okay. And then eventually it got to a week, 2 weeks where I wouldn't see him. So it was, it just gradually got worse over time.
Yeah. And I guess that sort of becomes like an addiction, right? It's like, and we've spoken about this as well, with partners that have taken love away. They'll take it away and they give it back, and all of a sudden you get this real big rush of dopamine. Yeah. And you get addicted to that feeling because it's like, well, if they leave, I know they're going to come back. But the longer they leave it, then the more anxious you get, and the better it feels when they come back, right? Yeah. But it's just this like real back and forth, real toxic sort of situation. And so that was your first relationship after you and the father of your children split up.
Yeah. So I just it's actually crazy because I think about, Jack is mirrored the way that my dad treated me as a kid. And my dad, by the way, if
that's the father of your kids, by the way.
Well, Jack is the father of my kids, but my dad is like the best man I've ever met in my whole life. Like, I love him.
You had really good male role models from a young age. Yeah.
So the way that my dad shows up for my mum as well, like I look at that and like that inspired me to want that relationship. And because Jack and I ended up together at such a young age, we were 15, he basically mirrored how my dad treated me. So my whole life I have had this like strong, supportive male men in my life.
Until you didn't.
Until I didn't. And I genuinely didn't know that that was a thing. Like the way that I was getting treated by my domestic violence experience, I couldn't believe that there were people out there like that. I thought that every man was going to treat me like my dad and Jack treated me. So yeah, that was a big wake up call.
So obviously we're not going to go too far into the DV side of things today. We'll save that for another episode because that's a whole conversation in itself. But when you speak about domestic violence, there's a lot of this around at the moment where people either don't believe that women go through this sort of stuff because, number one, they maybe haven't experienced anything like that or been like that themselves as a partner. And there's also a lot of women that cry wolf as well. So when we talk about the severity of your DV, I guess just to touch on it briefly because we will talk about that on another episode.
Yeah, of course.
What was that like for you?
I think it's just probably good to have an understanding of the severity of my trauma and then coming into this relationship.
For sure, yeah.
So when I say that mine was quite a severe experience, I experienced things such as being held hostage, being tortured, and almost losing my life and my kid's life. And like I said, we'll go through that a little bit deeper in a different episode because that is a whole different conversation.
It still blows me away hearing that, like, because I remember the first time we sat down at my kitchen bench and you told me about that and I was just like, whoa.
That was heavy. It was heavy.
It was, yeah.
And it is heavy to speak about. And that's why I don't really go into depth about it because the thing is, like, I can speak about it. I can tell you and I can tell everybody else, but no one's really going to understand because
no one's actually been there to live the experience.
No one has lived the experience. And there's certain things that I actually forget now. And I had to, after everything, because my situation was quite severe, that I had to go, it was going through courts, and there was a few things I had to do years after. And do things like victim impact statements, things like that. And I realized that for such a long time that I actually shut a lot of it out, and it's obviously to cope from the trauma that I experienced that I actually forget. And it wasn't until certain things happen or like things pop up now living life that I remember them.
See, it's funny, right? There's actually a thing that our brain does to protect the nervous system when you get into such a heightened state of overload, right? Yeah, the brain creates something called a mental scotoma, where it's almost like becomes like a blind spot over that part to protect you from experiencing that, because you would have been at the point where it was like you've almost shut down, you've literally almost given up, right? And from the experience that you explained to me, that would have definitely been what was taking place.
100%.
But you can have like a smell or like a sound or like something like that that'll pop up and bring that back on, right?
Yeah, well, I think that that is something that I want to be very vocal about in this experience with domestic violence, is that so we go through this trauma, and then coming into a relationship after you've experienced domestic violence, it is really challenging to navigate, because you have to unlearn all these behaviors and all these coping mechanisms that you once used to keep you safe. Like when you're going back into a relationship after, and it's not even domestic violence, let's just say trauma in general, you know?
Yeah, of course.
So going into a relationship, and for me, my past relationship wasn't safe. My past relationships weren't safe.
The last two,
yeah. And I'm not saying my last one, I've only been through one domestic violence, but my last one emotionally wasn't safe. So I'm not just saying on a physical level.
Yeah, it's emotional, it's mental, it's physical, it's even spiritual to some degree.
That's right. So if you don't have a man or a woman to hold a strong space for you, that you, after you've been through such trauma, there's no way that you can allow yourself to look at those triggers or show up differently.
I think that's a big thing, because there's definitely been some stuff that's popped up in our relationship, right? Some things that have surfaced. And it's one of those sort of things where I have had to obviously show up in a certain way, and it's like obviously it even has triggered things within myself, you know, insecurities that might come up because of the way that you react or the way that you show up.
Yeah.
But being able to compartmentalize that, and then to hold a space for you to know that you're going to work through it, even just in, you know, the 6 months that we've been together, noticing the way that you show up, the way that you behave around certain things has completely changed.
Yeah.
But I guess that also comes down to me being aware of what's actually happened for you.
Yeah.
I guess that's the thing, right? Like, not only me being aware, but also for us both wanting the same thing in this relationship. You know, the intention behind it, the way that we do show up for one another. I think that's the most important thing here is understanding what you have, you know, experienced, and knowing that, you know, that was a learned behavior.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, like all patterns of behavior can be changed if the person wants to change. And that's, I guess, the most important thing. It has to be a conscious want from, so for instance, for you to want to grow, to want to be better.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's only going to work ever in that kind of relationship if both parties are on the same page.
100%.
You know?
Like I said, I wouldn't be able to feel safe or even look at the things that I need to look at to heal from my past if it wasn't for you holding such a strong, nurturing space for me. There's no way, because like I experienced it in my last relationship. Still such a beautiful human, but emotionally couldn't show up for himself. So how was it that I could, if I got triggered, how could I go in and have a look at, oh, why have I got triggered? How is this relating back to my last relationship? Because I don't feel safe here.
Yeah.
There's no way that I could work through that. So like in this dynamic of this relationship, if it wasn't for your awareness, but also your selflessness to allow me to be safe and loved even when I'm not lovable in that emotional state.
So what is it specifically that I do, or the way that I show up, that has allowed you to sort of process certain things within this relationship? Can you think of specific things that I do? And I guess this is just for men out there, or women, that might be experiencing this type of stuff within their relationship, because once again, we can blame the other person. However, if I wasn't able to show up, like for instance, we've had, it's funny, like arguments, right? We don't really have arguments. It's more so a conversation, right? And we had this yesterday where you and I apparently had an argument. And I'm like, was that an argument? Is that what an argument was? In my past relationships, arguments are where you're fucking yelling at each other and you feel like an absolute bag of shit because your partner's just made you feel like this big and belittled you and just, you know. But even just that there, the communication we have, like what specifically is it within this relationship that has allowed you to feel safe to be able to look at your shit and process?
I think it is not withholding love from me. So something that takes me back to my childhood, to my mum and dad, is that whatever I go through in life, it doesn't matter if it is the most, you know, hardest, most challenging thing that I've ever been through, my mum and dad are right there beside me. And there's things that I've done that I've fucked up. Like when I was younger, I've fucked up. Like I've done things that I shouldn't have done. But they still turned to me and told me they loved me or, you know, were there to support me through that. It was like, even though I make mistakes and even though I'd done something I shouldn't have done, they still love me through that. And that's exactly what you do, is that I might have reacted in a way that I shouldn't have reacted or, you know, said something I shouldn't have said. But yet, instead of reacting, you're like, okay, where did that come from? You're curious about where that behavior came from as opposed to like, you know, raising your voice or
reacting
being
like you
upset.
said.
Yeah.
Yep.
You really don't make it about yourself. You really understand what it is about me that is like needing to be looked at, and you help me look at it. You hold that. When I say hold space, it's like, I don't know if people quite understand when I say holding space for me, but it's like letting me be emotional, letting me feel the feels and go, okay, because if you made it about you and you're like, oh, and then I'd be like, oh, you know, now I have to leave my emotions, put my emotions to the side and be like, hey, sorry, what did I do to upset you?
Or
then
suppress,
I can't
right? Or even suppress.
Yeah. So then I put that to the side and I'm like, I can't look at that. But what you do is you sit there with me in the emotions and you allow me to look at it. You guide me.
Yeah.
You don't ever say, hey, like, you don't point the finger. You're not like that at all. You just say, hey, like, maybe it might be from this or this or this. And you just help me guide. And I always get to the end point of like, oh, I know where this come from. And it's like light bulb moments all the time. And I think from this relationship, mostly I've learnt so much about like connecting where the emotions or where the reactions or whatever behaviors might be coming from. And a lot of them are leading back to the trauma that I experienced. Because you're allowing me to do that. So it's so healing.
See, but that in itself for a lot of men is really hard because for men, we don't even get taught to be comfortable with emotions. You know, for men, like a lot of the time sitting with a woman that's crying, it's like that's hard for them because they're like, oh, I don't know what I'm feeling right now because they've always internalized everything. They've always suppressed all the emotions that they feel. And I guess for men that are wanting to I guess, become high value men, to become healthy masculines, you've actually got to learn how to be comfortable in your masculinity. And that doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. That doesn't mean running away from them whatsoever. That actually means being able to sit in them, to feel them, to express them. That's a big part of it, right? And it comes down to emotional intelligence. They say, you know, these days when it comes to like, you know, going for corporate jobs and things like that, you're better off having EQ, which is emotional intelligence, than IQ, because the way that you can read a room, the way that you can navigate a situation, that's like all the sort of things that come down to it are like, well, you know, your critical thinking, being able to read what's actually going on in a situation and show up accordingly. That's way more important than knowing the fucking stats or knowing the metrics. And so for us as men, I think that's a really powerful thing to even talk into is, you know, not enough men are, and I think there is a big shift. I think there's a big shift taking place, but not enough men are actually doing the work to sit with their emotions and process their own shit so that they can hold space for others. Because until you can actually, I guess, feel comfortable in those emotions yourself, you're never going to be able to hold that space for a woman. And, you know, we talk about this when like femininity, masculinity, toxic femininity, whatever you want to call it. It just comes back down to a lack of understanding and awareness around education around themselves. You know?
So, sorry, I was going to cut you off there. But
Cut me off. Just.
I'm really curious, from your perspective, what's been the most challenging part of holding space for me?
I guess the most challenging thing is when I do feel emotionally activated because of something that you've said, being able to become curious. That's something I'm still working on. It's not not a perfect thing that I'm great at yet. It's something that I'm working on, right? I definitely think I'm getting better at it, but being able to put my own shit aside and hold that space for you is definitely challenging at times. It's definitely challenging, and my ego wants to come up, fuck you, make it about myself. But that's definitely been the most challenging thing, because in the past I've always been in reactive relationships where it's a tit for tat. She'll say something, I'll say something. She'll say something, I'll say something. There's no solution. There's no conflict resolution as such. The conflict resolution is us shutting down, me going to get on the bag, and her fucking avoiding, or her calling me 30,000 times and me just not looking at my phone. Right? that was the guy that I was for a very long time. But it's definitely been being able to hold that space. Internalize it, and then come back to that after the fact. That's definitely been the hardest part. But when I say the hardest part, it's also been where the most growth's occurred for myself within a relationship. I shouldn't even say hard. It's been challenging, because I don't think anything has to be hard. We make it hard. If we're willing to look at it and actually willing to process it and willing to do the uncomfortable stuff to work through those things, those situations. On the other side, generally is where the growth occurs. It's like the rainbow at the end of the storm, or the day after the night. You go through the hard shit, you get the rewards. That's the problem. Is I think a lot of not just men but women and men aren't willing to actually look at their shit. They're not willing to, especially when it comes to relationships. We all want this fairy tale perfect relationship. It doesn't fucking exist. We've all got our shit, and we're all walking around with this big emotional backpack of all the stuff that happened last year. And here's me just lugging it across and taking it into my next relationship. And I'm like, oh, here you go. This looks like a nice place to drop this. Without actually wanting to do the work, the uncomfortable stuff to work through it. And this is the experience that I have with all the men that I work with. They're like, oh my God, I didn't even know that existed. Oh my God, just by changing the way that I look at this situation, now I can communicate with my partner, and their relationships are better because of it, And all it takes is just, first of all, having the courage. Once again, it takes strength to look at their own shit, which then allows them to see things from a different perspective for their partners, for their friends, for their family members, for their kids, for their employees, whatever it might be. Right? This isn't just for men within relationships. When you have that level of emotional intelligence, when you have that level of emotional awareness, it improves your ability to connect with everyone around you. It improves your ability to communicate with everyone around you. It improves your ability to resolve conflicts when it comes to business, when it comes to relationship, when it comes to family, friends, whatever. I think it's such a powerful thing that is definitely becoming what's the word I'm looking for? More normalised within masculine culture. But for so long, our concept of what masculinity was broken, and so many of us are still stuck in that, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's something that I was even speaking to you about yesterday is like, and we're not talking for every man here, because, you show up for me. You're the most manly definition of a man that I know. And my dad, of course, But like...
He's got more hair on his chest.
Well, he does. I don't know, you're both as hairy as me.
Yeah, but I shave, it's okay.
But it has somewhat forced women to show up more masculine. And that's something that I have experienced wholeheartedly after my experience with domestic violence. So because of experience such trauma, I've then become really hyper independent.
When I met you, you were like that. Remember the first hug I got off you? The first 6 hugs? It's like, okay, tap on the back. Like, yeah, mate, there you go. Good on your job.
See you later.
See you later, bud.
Don't touch it.
And I was like, I remember bringing that up with you. We were sitting at Soak Bathhouse. I'm like, you're really closed off. But you also come across when we talk and text, very feminine.
Yeah.
What is with that?
And I want to be feminine.
And it dropped from that, right? It dropped after that. But it was such a protective mechanism that you had to protect your soul, your heart and your soul.
100%. And that served me. That served me for a long time.
Well, that's what got you to being quite successful in business. That's what got you to being where you were. But obviously that only served you to a certain level.
Point, yeah. So I think this is really interesting to talk on, is how I showed up after.
Nah, this bores me.
Does it?
Next topic, yeah.
Let's go. I'm really bored.
Yeah, you said you were bored yesterday.
Yeah. So how I showed up after experiencing domestic violence was to be masculine in every area of my life. I was a single mum. I had to go out and make my own money. I had to protect. I had to provide. I had to be all the things for my kids.
Self-sufficient, independent woman.
I am an independent woman.
Holla.
And I don't need no
Can
man.
I get a hey?
But that is far from the truth. Honestly, any woman that shows up like that and says that they don't need a man, look, we don't need men. We are so capable. I was so capable, and I know I was so capable, and I still am.
Of course.
I'm still so capable to do.
Do you want to be?
But I don't want to be.
Yeah.
I don't want to be. I don't want to be hyper independent. I want to have the relationship that we have, and this has taken a lot of work on my end. There's even things that, you know, that have had to come up, that have come up in our relationship to allow me to be loved, for you to love me, and for me to allow that love.
Of course.
Has been so fucking hard. It's been definitely. So fucking hard. It's been hard to be looked after by a man. And
but that's because of previous experiences, right?
And people think that's crazy, right? That people would actually think that's crazy, because that's what we want. As women, we want to be looked after. We want to be cared for. And that's all I ever wanted. But because of experiences, I didn't even realize that I had that wall up. I didn't even realize that I had that armor over my heart. But like, and that's the thing, like we were speaking about before, because the way that you show up, it allows me to navigate through that and go, hey, that's not actually what I want. I do want to be feminine. I do want to be looked after and nurtured from you. So I think from my experience, and even coming into this relationship, the hardest part was to be looked after. To be looked after in finances. I was so hyper independent around my finances.
But that's because of obviously past traumas around that itself. Like obviously when you've allowed others to look after you financially, they put it back on you, you know,
or they had power over me.
That's right. It became a power struggle.
Yeah.
Okay. It's almost like a power trip for them.
Yeah.
That was all about ego.
Yeah.
I guess that's another thing as well. Like, man, if you're, you know, thinking you can do whatever you want because you provide for your partner and she's fucking miserable, you're not being a good man at all.
No.
You know.
And if that's the only thing that you're providing for, there's
a whole lot more.
No.
You know, that's right. Just because you know, go to work every day and then come home doesn't make you the fucking man. You've got to show up as a fucking man too. You got to obviously be there to nurture, to provide, to, you know, exactly. It comes
hold
down
them emotionally.
Exactly right. There's so many different elements to it. And I guess this is like, wow, English. I guess this is where being a high value man really comes down to it, right? It's like you can do one thing, you can be the provider, but that's fucking not enough.
No way.
That isn't enough. And if you wonder why your partner's miserable, or why she's gone and cheated on you, or she's looking at other men, or whatever it might be, generally that's going to come down to you not providing something for her, you know, not making her feel safe. And I think that's the other thing to talk into here, right? It's one thing for, you know, a woman to be hyper independent. However, if she hasn't got a man that's allowing her to drop into her femininity and allowing her to feel safe, because that is what we're meant to do here as men. You know, it's to provide, to protect, and to create that safe space for our women, right? In tribal times, the men would go and hunt, the women would stay with the children. You know, the women and children would stay back and they'd nurture, they'd grow the family. You know, there's none of that now. Now it's every man for themselves.
You've done that a little too hard in this relationship.
What's that?
You've made me drop into my feminine so much that I don't want to come out of it.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, but I still do the cleaning. Oh, cooking, sorry, not cleaning. You definitely do the cooking. I do the cleaning. I do the cooking.
You're a good cook.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that was something I had to navigate as well. Is I have been in my masculine, I've operated from my masculine in business, and don't get me wrong, that served me. Like I love business and I love what I do, but as of late, I've really had to navigate how to operate from my feminine and still be in business. And that was fucking hard because when we started seeing each other, I worked all the time. Like literally I would wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I wouldn't go to bed till 10, 11 o'clock at night, later sometimes. I would work all the time. And then it wasn't until I met you that again, it's just the space that you hold and the way that you show up. It's like you allow me to be so feminine and I fucking love it. I love it so much that I don't want to be masculine anymore. I don't need to be masculine anymore. So that's really shifted the dynamic of how I operate my business. And I think it's coming from such a different place. It's not forced. It is definitely more aligned with where I'm going. And it's, again, it's that flow. I feel like now the way that I'm attracting what is coming in and allowing what is coming into my life is so much more fulfilling for me. It's not like again, it's just not forced. It's not like I'm not somebody who I'm not anymore.
Yeah.
because you're allowing me to be the person who I really am at my absolute core.
100%. I think that's even just down to me being in my masculine and being able to be that in a healthy way, not in a controlling way, but in a protective way that's obviously healthy. I wouldn't be able to do that if you were in your
masculine.
in your masculine, right? And we see it in other relationships where it's like there's a woman that's so far in her masculine and her partner is almost in the feminine, right? It's almost demasculating for him. He's not living into his authentic essence. And so I guess that's another thing that I'm really grateful for, is the fact that I was able to drop you into that, because we wouldn't be where we are today.
No way.
There's no way, because I am quite a dominant figure. Like I am quite in my masculine, right? And if I hadn't, if we hadn't been able to figure out that masculine feminine dynamic, then you know, no one, I don't want to fuck a bloke. You know what I mean? Like, just quietly, like, I don't swing that way. That's not my cup of tea. And if it's yours, great, good for you. But, you know, it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
You know?
But that is like where we kind of like started off this conversation, is these days men aren't showing up the way that they're supposed to show up.
Correct.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
And
you're entitled to that.
And yeah, of course.
But I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying.
And women are forced to be more masculine. So like I look at the world now and I'm like, no relationship, everything is disposable.
Yeah.
Relationships disposable. Women don't feel safe enough to be a woman.
Yeah.
They want to be the protector and provider because they're scared, because the man isn't showing up the way that they're supposed to. And it is literally like reflecting in so many relationships, especially around us, I feel.
Yeah.
And it's making it harder to even go into a relationship, I believe.
Yeah, well, people are a lot more guarded or closed off to it
100%.
because, well, number one, they've been hurt in the past, so they don't want to be hurt. But also, if we look at like the typical dynamic between masculine and feminine, it's like the men would provide, the women would stay with women and children. But now, with the other women and children. But now, a lot of the time, the only value proposition that a woman is bringing to a relationship is a pair of lashes and fake tits. Do you know what I mean? No, but like seriously, like this is the only value proposition, is that this like sexual attraction.
The way that they look.
The way that they look, right? And so that works temporarily, you know, and this is where I've been in the past with relationships as well, is like being very much a physical element to it, very much attracted to what I see. But the thing is, for that to ever last, they have to maintain the same level of looks. They have to maintain the same level of sexual connection for the relationship to ever work out long term. You know, and so I think that, like, obviously, yes, men need to show up differently, but also women need to allow themselves to be held differently by men. You know, so I think it goes both ways. You know, and it's not just the men not showing up; it's also women not
allowing.
That's
yeah,
right.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, they just don't feel safe enough to I guess step into that feminine role that you should. Well, I believe that you should play in a relationship. Like, we both have roles. You're a masculine role, I'm a feminine role. Like, if we're both masculine, we're going to be button heads.
Because like this. This is how it'd go, like that. Just a little bit of that. You like that shit? You like that? You want a doc? You want some docking? Yeah.
Honestly, do you see what I'm dealing with?
How she still puts up with me, I have no idea. I'm the biggest pest, but I feel like I make it my mission to be a pest.
You do.
I do. It's been wearing you a little bit thin lately, hasn't it?
Not really. Like, it has been, but also it doesn't bother me that much. I'm just not somebody that is overly reactive.
No, that's almost like what pushes me harder and makes me want to even like trigger you even further.
To try and see where's the edge
where's the edge, you know? I'm edging right now. But no,
yeah.
honestly, darling, it's been beautiful to be in this relationship with you, to be able to navigate this and obviously continue to grow. But I think the big thing here as well is like people say relationships are 50-50. They're not. They're 100-100. You've got to be all in. You know, if you just dip your toe in the ocean, that's going to obviously create uncertainty within a relationship.
I feel like that was me at the start.
Fuck yeah, it was. But also, like, to some degree, it was me as well.
Yeah.
You know, because we both sort of said we didn't want a relationship. We weren't looking for a relationship, but this sort of just organically happened as we said that, right?
And also, like, just from assuming we both come from a very similar background. We've experienced similar friend groups, similar, you know, work experiences, that type of thing. I think I was like, just putting a label on you.
Yeah, of course. What was the label? What was the label you would have put on me?
Fuck boy.
Once upon a time, maybe. Once upon a time.
So I just wasn't, like, obviously if I put a label on you being a fuckboy, I was like, I'm just not interested in that. I don't have the capacity for that anymore. I've been through so much in my life that I'm ready to step wholeheartedly into, I'll be having a life partner and wanting to build and create a big life, and I need somebody that can show up for me and my kids.
That's the big thing, right? Is obviously having kids as well in the dynamic.
Yeah. And create a fucking huge, impactful life. And I want it together. I don't want it to just be me doing, this is me doing my thing over there and this is you doing your thing. Like, it was really important for me to have somebody that was like, this is our thing. Like, let's fucking go. Let's do this together.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing, right? And like I've said this before, I feel, if we're not growing together, we're growing apart. And this is where so many relationships end up splitting off because one partner's going one way, the other partner's going the other way. So for us, especially, because I've been through that as well, and I move at a very fast rate, as do you. You make shit happen. We don't fucking just talk about it. We try and be about it to the best of our ability. And that's a beautiful thing, but it's also threatening to a lot of people, and we obviously you felt this as well in the past with past relationships. You outgrow that partner. So I think another thing that really helped us with our relationship, building this really strong foundation that we do have, is the level of communication we do have even from the beginning, talking about what we wanted, where we're going, and making sure that was aligned, and actually having adult conversations about that. People say, oh, you shouldn't talk about kids on the fucking second date. You shouldn't, be doing this on the third date, whatever it might be. Like, who makes the fucking rules? At the end of the day, I was very clear on what I wanted. You were very clear on what you wanted, and I respected the fuck out of that because we were able to communicate that in a way that then allowed us to agree that this is where we're going. We're going there together. So why fucking waste time? And I guess that's the thing. Like, people say you move too fast. You've done this. You've done that. But when you're going to the same place with that person and you've had those conversations from the get-go, I think it makes it a lot easier.
But I think it's not even just about having the conversations with us. It was like we seen the actions of the
We're taking the action, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not just talking about it.
It's kind of happened really organically for us. Like, it's not like, oh, we'll just talk about, let's just like, do you want to make a podcast? Yeah. It's like, no, like, this is what we're doing. Let's do a podcast. Like, this is what the future looks like for us and let's just go and do the things. Like, it's not even really been like even a question whether, if we do things together that this isn't going to work out. Like, that hasn't even been something that has even come to our mind.
And even with the conflicts we've had, it's like being able to navigate that because of the communication we do have. I think that's the foundation to all of this.
Something I wanted to ask you yesterday, actually, when we were having that argument. So we were having a disagreement. And so for me, an argument is like when you're literally just like almost verbally abusing each other, shouting at each other, like, which is what I've had in the past with relationships, right? Before I became a lot more aware of what it takes to show up in a relationship, because once again I was modeled that from my parents, but this disagreement, and the thing is, like, it did definitely feel uncomfortable. It felt uncomfortable. That energy was uncomfortable.
We were able to resolve that quite quickly.
Yeah. So what I was going to ask is, because I've experienced this in the past, so when we have an argument or a disagreement, is there ever any thoughts that this isn't the relationship for you?
No.
No, neither. Ever.
No.
I'm
no,
just
it's
like,
just like,
we'll work this out. I don't even think we'll work this out. I know we do.
Yeah, that's right. But the thing is, it's like, because there's a knowing there, because we're both obviously wanting the same thing. I think that's the alignment as well. It's not like we just ticked one or two boxes. We ticked like all the boxes to some degree. And so it's like, it's worth making it work, whereas, and this is another thing as well, like you said before, like relationships these days are so disposable. People shut down, people don't know how to communicate, so they just fuck it, too hard basket, chuck it in the bin, you know.
Or already looking for the next thing.
Yeah, that's a big one as well. And that's the thing, it's like, if you're already looking for the next thing, number one, you probably don't know what you actually want, because you're just looking for something to fill the void at the time.
Settled.
Yeah, or you're settled, that's right. You weren't actually willing to be alone and do the work that needed to be done to actually attract the kind of woman or man that you deserve or want.
So I have a question for you, coming back to our...
You've already asked too many.
No, I'm going to ask more.
No.
Coming back to our initial conversation about how, in your perspective...
Is that what we're talking about?
Yes. And so I want to know, when it comes to holding space, in your advice, like to those that are holding space for somebody that's gone through trauma, what would you say is something that's been the most challenging for you, but also how you've gone about overcoming that?
It's a good question. It's a really good question. See, I feel for me, this relationship's like, I've shown up completely differently in this relationship to how I have in the past, because of the way that you show up. And so when something does come up around, like, let's say like a trigger or something like that, or you shut down or whatever it might be with the things that have happened in the past, I think it's the most challenging thing is being able to, like I said before, put my own shit to the side to hold that space for you. But the way that I've been able to navigate that is, I guess, once again, coming back to what we were talking about a second ago, knowing that this relationship is what I want, you know, and actually wanting to work at it. So that's the way that I've gotten through it. It's like, actually, okay, cool. Well, what does she need right now? Understanding that, and actually even having those conversations with you. Let's just say, for instance, like yesterday, like, hey, is there anything you need from me in that situation so we can navigate that differently? But actually asking the questions around that sort of stuff when it does come up, because generally when these things do arise, you obviously come back to a place of, let's call it comfort, or, you know, a place of love within a relationship once you've navigated it. But asking you what you need in that time, and then being able to actually pull from that conversation we've had and give that to you. So I think for you as well, like when you say you disassociate and you go into shutdown, you know, it's like all you need is to love. You almost like to be shaken and to be held, just to like bring you back down to your body, to give you that touch.
I was just about to say, so when I'm triggered, what are the signs to you from your perspective? What are the signs when you can see me start to like either slip away or whatever you think that I do in that circumstance?
Well, I think I'm very lucky in that I have done a lot of work around this, but it's also just looking at like your body language, right? Like you can literally see within someone when they shut down. For you, what happens is once like your soul leaves your body, and you can see you starting to slip away, you get really short with your answers. Your energy feels very disconnected. Okay, and so I'll just ask you, babe, are you disassociating? Is everything okay? Is there anything you need from me right now? You know, I'll just ask those questions, or I'll just call it out and go, babe, you're disassociating, what's going on? And a lot of the time you go, no, I'm not. And then you'll go, actually, yeah, I am, and come back to it, right?
Yeah. I am now, because you're making me feel safe enough to be able to come back to it.
That's right. So I think in the beginning it was definitely a lot more challenging. But just being patient with it, knowing that this is a relationship that I do want and I do want to make it work. And that's probably, the signs are though, like literally watching you like completely change your whole facial structure, everything just completely changes. And we see it the same with your daughter, you know, and we can see it happen right away. But I think that does just come back to that level of emotional awareness, being able to read the room, being able to read what's going on with someone's energy and what's going on with the person at the time.
Again, not taking that personally.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big part as well, is like not making the impersonal personal. We as human beings have a big habit of taking things and making them all about ourselves, you know, which is quite egoic if you ask me. Like fucking to think that the world revolves around us. It's pathetic, isn't it?
We are this big
and tiny little things, right? That's right. So like everyone's got their own shit going on. Just being a little bit more compassionate, being a little bit more aware has been the things that have really helped me. But once again, if it wasn't for the way that you show up as a partner and actually willing and wanting to do that work, it wouldn't make it as easy as it is for me. I think as well, because you're not playing the victim, you actually want to work through your shit. And I think if we can touch on that with relationships and especially DV, there are a lot of women that do play the victim. They play into that and they almost get their needs met by, we call it winning by losing, right? And it's like, I was the survivor of domestic violence. Fix me, fix me, fix me. It's like, love, sorry, but look, and this is going to be a fucking very a controversial way of putting it, but you chose to stay in that relationship.
Correct.
You know, you fucking chose to stay in that. And now that you're out of it, you're still choosing to stay in it. You're staying in the mindset of it, right? You're still almost playing the victim to some degree, and we see this a lot, right?
The only circumstance that I do feel for that is if they have kids with that person.
Of course.
And, you know, sometimes that they might have stayed in the relationship and those things may have not come up whilst, you know, in that early stages of relationships because... And look, this word is thrown around like fucking willy-nilly.
Domestic violence and narcissism,
yeah. But the thing is, like, it's a real fucking thing.
It is, and it does...
Narcissism is a real fucking thing. And don't get me wrong, we all have traits of it, but there's a scale.
Yeah, 100%.
There's a fucking scale.
100%.
And when you're dealing with somebody that has got narcissistic traits, they are very intelligent. They are fucking very intelligent, and they will mirror exactly what you want. And then one day it just like a fucking switch. It just flips.
Yeah.
Like so I do understand in that instance, but with people that have no links to that person that choose to stay in that situation, then they are really choosing to still be there. Then
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, 100%. And I guess that's the thing, like, is the fact that you are willing to become the hero in your story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not playing into it. You're not using that as a way to validate self. It's funny how we as human beings get our needs met, but a lot of the time it'll come from trauma, talking about it and living in that still, which stops us from moving on from it, right? Because we can't validate ourselves through something negative that happened in our life if we choose to move past it.
Yeah, it's really, it's interesting to experience it, because when, we'll get into this more in depth, but like, I never experienced domestic violence prior to that relationship. So I had healthy role models and I had healthy men in my life. So then experiencing domestic violence and severe domestic violence after that, it's kind of like, I feel like I've never really, like, I'm sure there might have been parts of me that played the victim, but I was more fucking shocked and confused, to be honest with you. I think a big part of me was like, you know, I did go into shutdown and I did dissociate for years, and I numbed myself through drugs, alcohol, work, whatever that looked like. So I really don't think there was times where I played the victim, because I was so fucking confused. I didn't even know I didn't even understand that I was a victim. I didn't even understand why he did that to me. Like, I was so fucking curious from the very beginning. I remember the minute that the cops came and he got taken away. And I remember sitting there with my girlfriend that came to me, and I was like, is he okay? Like, I was still
but that's also
worried about him.
But that's also due to the amount of trauma that you suffered at his hand. It's almost like Stockholm syndrome to some degree. You know, where you were so worried about him because you'd abandoned yourself in the process, right? It was like the fixer rescuer and you wanted to fix him. Yeah. Which is fucking sad, which is so fucking sad. But that's a topic for another day. That is a topic for another day. But no, I was just saying that just for after experiencing that, I don't ever feel like I showed up in a victim mentality. It was because, like, I was so shocked that it even had happened to me, that kind of level of violence had happened to me, because deep down I know that I didn't deserve that, and I am not somebody that is reactive. Like, in this relationship, I know that you can see that I'm not a reactive person, so that's why I was really more so confused, and I never really played victim. But yeah, when it comes to, you know, being a woman that has experienced domestic violence, and if there's women out there that is experiencing going into a new relationship, I think the thing is, like, you have to really sit with those emotions first. Like, it took me years, and it took me years and years of healing. Even still, I'm still healing. Of course. But there's certain things that come up that you need to look at before you're able to allow yourself to be loved and love in another relationship in a healthy way. So I think that's probably the hardest thing if I was to give any advice to a woman that is wanting to go back into a healthy, that's the other thing. You want a healthy relationship after that, and you know all these unhealthy, toxic traits that are within you now because of that dynamic. So it's like, number one, you have to unlearn them all. And number two, you're still, like, are you attracting the same? Is it another lesson? Like, what are you looking at in that dynamic of that person that you're attracting now? And that's probably the hardest bit. That's the hardest bit, is also loving yourself first. I had to forgive myself. That was the number one thing in this whole situation before. And I think just coming into this relationship just before you, I had been in one other relationship after my domestic violence relationship, and I think that even throughout that, I still hadn't forgiven myself. It wasn't until certain things, just as of recently, that I've, like, fully forgiven myself. So, yeah. What are you looking at me like that for? I don't know what to say next. No, honestly, babe, it's this is the thing. It definitely has been challenging for both of us in this relationship, because people probably see us from the outside looking in, and they're like, oh, you know, everything looks great and perfect. Like, it definitely hasn't been. there's obviously been like things that we've both struggled with, but also that's half the journey. That's half the fun of it, right? But it's definitely been a new experience holding such a strong space for someone who's suffered so much trauma within domestic violence, and obviously then trying to navigate that. But I think that, you know, as far as it goes, we've both done well to show up and obviously compliment one another with that. You know, because it wouldn't, like, I wouldn't be able to hold this space if you didn't allow me to hold that space.
Yeah, that's right.
I wouldn't be able to show up as a man that I am if you didn't allow me to do so, right? And I think that's the big part of this is, like, we spoke about the masculine feminine dynamic before. If you'd stayed stuck in that masculine that you had when we first met, you know, the way that you were, then we wouldn't be able to be where we are within this relationship.
Yeah, 100%. Again, it comes back to both of us playing the part in this relationship. It's not just me or it's not just you.
That's right. I think we spoke about that earlier as well. It's like when it comes to relationship, just in general, it's 100-100. And especially for people that are out there struggling, it's never too late to, you know, make a change and to improve your relationship, but both parties need to be on board with that.
But improve ourselves too, first and foremost.
Yeah, of course, 100%. Like, because a lot of the time, the things we see in our partners that we don't like are actually just a reflection of us. And I guess that's the beautiful thing about this relationship. We see so much beauty, but that's also a reflection of who we are as humans.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we say all the time, I literally, like, look at you and I'm like, I love so many parts of you.
Yeah.
So many parts of you. And
What's your
I'm like,
favorite part?
that's a hard one. You're putting me on the spot.
I am.
My favorite part of being with you, it is definitely the emotional intelligence and the depth of conversation that we have in this relationship. Like, it has never fucking been surface level from literally the first time we met.
Yeah.
I think we were looking back at messages the other day.
Yeah, we were.
Literally from the start.
Yeah, I think one of the first things you asked me, like, hey, so what love language are you?
Yeah.
This is like on the first couple of days.
I think so.
Just to understand, like, you know,
Yeah,
but that's the thing, like, you've got to also understand what you need in a relationship first. You know, I think that's the beautiful thing coming into this. We both sort of had a clear understanding of what we wanted out of a relationship. And who we were as people as well. Yeah. You know, and that is what has allowed us to continue to grow together. You know, we haven't slowed down. We've fucking just sped up, and I feel like it's not going to slow down. But that's great because we're both on the same page. We're choosing to do that,
though. We're choosing to look at everything as a lesson, and I think that's the beauty in our relationship is, like, every single thing we go through is like, okay, how is this going to make us stronger, or what do we need to do to get to the next level, you know? Like, everything really is looking at it like a lesson.
Equanimity. Neither good nor bad, right? Neither good nor bad. Well, babe, this has been fun. Love talking about our relationship. It's good fun. And look forward to continuing to grow with you. Now, for people that want to reach out, Her Journey Coaching on Instagram, New Age Man Coaching on Instagram if you guys want to have a yarn, or otherwise obviously follow the podcast page. And we're always happy to have a chat about this sort of stuff when it comes to relationship. So feel free to reach out.
And we also want to know what you guys want to hear from us.
Yeah, what sort of topics would you like us to talk about? So the way we're going to run this, I guess this is the third episode now, so the way we're going to run this is me and Tiani will do a conversation together once a week, once a fortnight, and then every other week, we're going to have guests come on. So any male guests, I'll run the show. Any female guests, Tiani will hold the beautiful feminine space for them.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
So cool people that you want to hear from, any topics you'd like to hear us talk about. Obviously, once again, this is our perspective. You might not agree with it, but we're going to be fucking open, raw, and authentic with everything that we say. Yeah. Whether that ruffles feathers or not, sweet. We're not here to fucking make friends. we're here to share our truth, and that's what two truths and a life is all about.
I love that.
I love you.
I love you.
All right. Bye.